Goats comp 3-3, triple tank, triple support was the meta a few patches ago, at least at the highest levels of play, but despite it being somewhat viable if you're really good at it, unless you play it perfectly, I think it's more a detriment than a benefit if the enemy knows how to engage against you. We're going to talk about a few principles here that you really can exploit on the current patch due to how some of the interactions changed. And in this first example where I'm playing Sombra, I don't want you to look too closely at what I'm doing because the enemy actually does a pretty good job of outplaying me, at least on point A, but notice how at no point is my front line ever in fear of the enemy Goats team from walking over them. Even funneled into relatively poor positioning here, because I'm able to keep contesting the top center high ground, if we're not brawling, the Brigitte comp is at a massive disadvantage, because essentially we have me dealing damage building ult, whereas their Brigitte really struggles to get in close range. Traditionally, what the Brigitte used to be able to do is go set up for aggressive stuns into my Reinhardt and run him over, but now my front line can play a lot more defensively until we get into the ult fight. Even though they outplay my EMP by trancing right before it, we simply are doing more damage overall to the enemy than they can deal back to us. Now, the very first principle I want to explain about the new weakness of Goats is the liability of Brigitte. And yes, it's a weird thing to be saying nowadays, but Brigitte's limitations are finally out in the open, which is especially the case when a team attempts to run her on defense. Here we're running basically a mirror match, but instead of our own Brigitte, I'm running Sombra, and we also have an Ana as well, which effectively means our ult fight is just better. Even though they end up outplaying my EMP here, until they have Rally online, because we can poke and the Brigitte can't aggress into our Reinhardt, the team fights more or less look like that. And that's our first lesson that I want to describe. The big difference between the old patch and the new one is that you now can hold your ground up against a Brigitte comp even when you don't have your own. And remember, as long as you don't brawl into the Brigitte and instead poke, you will eventually win, because the longer period of time that you stretch out her not being able to have Inspire active, and then when she goes aggressive to try to land flails, punish her, I think you're really going to find you're going to mount an advantage eventually through the attrition of the fight. Now, Brigitte is still a strong pick, and pro teams will still use the comp with perfect synergy to go and attack objectives, because just having a shield to block and zone out people contesting the point can still give you some free payload progress. But I think especially on defense, it's a big mistake, because of my next tip, well, we've explained it in a few videos already, but Bastion is seriously a contender for the best anti-Goats character in the game. We've shown you examples of him being comboed with Symmetra to move him around, but if you don't have a Symmetra, remember that you just have to prepare your rotations ahead of time. Setting up really defensive here on the streets phase of Hollywood may have been overkill. I probably didn't even need to, and I still would have survived. But whenever you feel the reinforcements are about to come back, you want to be at a safe distance so that you can fire from medium range, but still do enough effective damage while requiring the enemy to make a serious overcommitment to come get you. That's the sweet spot. You don't want to be too far away to not do anything, but you don't want to be too close either that you get overwhelmed by the tanks with one speed amp. Simply turreting up from a safe distance away will really make them reconsider playing Brigitte, who does basically nothing up against the Bastion pick, and her 600 health points of shields, while normally quite impressive against a normal damage dealer, doesn't do much of anything against Bastion. His volume of damage is just too high. And to combine the last two examples together, I want you to remember that Sombra pick I had wasn't overly effective. It more so was just we had a damage character and they didn't. I think if you look back to that Volskaya game and we set up a Bastion somewhere safely, even behind my tanks yet again, to zone out anything that tries to contest the point, we probably do even better. Bastion's the real deal. Other projectile damage can be really good as well, but frankly, a lot of damage characters can feel usable up against the Goats comp nowadays, as long as your tank play is on point, which is going to be our next area of focus. Here on Route 66, classic Goats comp, trying to ride the cart. Man, this is going to be easy. However, not only does my damage play well, I do a lot of cheeky maneuvers to get a lot of time stalled on this cart, making for my setup and how my teammates are contesting the cart to be a major thorn in their side. You see, whether it's the diva or myself in that position above the cart, it's contested. And the number one rule that I want you guys to remember when going up against Goats, yes, they do want to send just about their entire team to the cart to brawl it out, but you as the defender only need one character at a time to be able to touch the cart. And Orisa on this high ground with the shield to help protect her and shimmy and dodge in order order to contest the cart from the high ground really gave the GOATS comp fits. What you don't want to do is commit down so that you're in fighting range against the Brawl comp. Instead, you want to stay at arm's reach and try to cycle touching the payload when you have Fortify available and really rotate the defense matrix and armor health of your D.Va and yourself in order to buy time for the objective to get no progress while your DPS go to work. Now, during this, every squishy character needs to remember that their goal is to play deathmatch. Only the tanks should ever consider touching the cart against the GOATS comp, because if you get in range of Brigitte or any of the other characters, especially Zarya when she's at high charge, you will get fried. It's the tank's job to know how to maximize their life, stalling the objective, which sometimes may require the objective to be let go. Now, I've made a ton of videos about ignoring the objective, don't push the payload. You definitely want to watch those as well, but the GOATS comp really tests your ability to give the right answer to that question when it comes up. This first clip on Eichenwald, I'm playing Wrecking Ball. This is in overtime after I've already kind of talked to the team about how we could adjust some of our play, so I'll show you a mistake after this. But you can see here I have a few goals in mind. I'm looking to delay their advancement towards the payload as much as I can, knocking them away or engaging in when damage is landed, and it forces them to go for a really crazy rotation that we should have seen coming. In hindsight, I wish I gave the call out for us to move our entire set up and run away as they flushed us out, because they don't really need the high ground. It doesn't do anything for them. They have to keep chasing us. But nevertheless, we get enough kills and kite back so that we thin out this push, wasting a lot of time from the attacking team. Now, because we have a Bastion set up there, there's two options for the GOATS comp. Do they go to point and try to brawl it out? Well, what we're going to do as Wrecking Ball is quite similar to our job as Orisa, but this time, because there's a payload, we're going to try to spin around it, pop massive adaptive shields to increase our ability to face tank and contest the point, but don't overdo it. If you give up some point progress, that's always okay, because you have to effectively deathmatch this comp. Now, this looks even more severe when we look onto the streets phase here, where I think I have an even scarier angle to just keep launching myself at the cart, making it take forever for the enemy to get any progress. Remember, as soon as I touch the cart, even just swinging past it, I can test it while I'm near it. So I basically can keep engaging on it forever and have my entire team ignore the payload, don't touch it, only Wrecking Ball does, and I manage my tanking to stall it. And this was working out perfectly until me and Farah go on a flank that does eventually get a kill on the Ana, but as we come back, we see what my team failed to do. They're all set up looking to contest the payload, which really that's my job, which I was coming back to do in just a few moments. So that's why I think it's very important to get on the comms when you're the tank player here to tell everyone to stay alive, ignore the objective. That's not their job. They have to survive and frag, which you do by having better positioning, playing the high ground, going on flanks, do literally anything else that you want as long as it gets kills. Let the tanks cycle their abilities to survive on the payload to impede its progress when they have the availability to do so. Now, even retaking here, doing that process of cycling onto the cart, I nearly get both support kills, but I'm forced to run away. And if you look as I start to regroup, you see what the failure of my teammates' positioning is. They're all set up as if we're standing behind a Reinhardt shield. Everybody on the bridge. Farah's over the top, but the rest of us are holding at the checkpoint like that's where we want to be. Now, the Steve bomb is going to end up killing me anyway, but it's very important that all you squishy players out there, whether you're Zenyatta or Hanzo or whoever in the situation, know that you want to have a vantage point to kill things, not be close to the checkpoint or the objective or anything, because they're all riding it. They got their shields up. You're not going to break the shields. You have to flank them to get damage in and then just hope and pray that your tank makes the right call to stall it before it's too late. But if Hanzo and Farah are fighting from basically the same angle, it's much harder to get critical damage onto the supports. Whereas if our damage dealers like Zen and Hanzo were on the bridge right now as I'm dying on cart, there's an opportunity to be shooting them in the back rather than shooting them in the shield, which we can't afford to do unless you have Bastion or 4 DPS or something crazy. Now, for our last example, I wanted to show a pro game where a rather interesting defense was set up, and I want us to focus in on a few key characters for the Stormquake defense here. Proper is on the Farah. He's going to be the main carry here, but you'll notice that him and the Widowmaker try to play different angles when they can, and we'll want to hone in on a few key decisions. Where does Kaiser, their Orisa player, decide to contest from? And an extra interesting wrinkle, they're on a Brigitte backline setup here. I don't know is the most optimal use, but it ends up working out where they have the Brigitte do nothing else, basically, other than armor pack the Pharah whenever D.Va dives at her. This is an interesting change-up, because you'll notice that our defensive Brigitte gets almost no ult charge in this entire game, because she's not in there flailing or proccing Inspire. Instead, she's basically a repair pack pocket for the Pharah, which normally you would see a Mercy, but the interesting thing is that the enemy D.Va is going to struggle much more to blast through any armor, even more so than a Mercy pocket. So you're going to get less damage technically from the Pharah with no damage amp, but you're able to play a lot closer to the enemy, so maybe it's more effective damage anyway, because you're not afraid of the D.Va, because just about every time that she has thrusters available, armor pack will likely be there to plop on the Pharah, and he's not even afraid to use it preemptively to give armor, not just healing for health, which is one of the few cases that I think I've seen it ever attempted to be used that way, because of course D.Va's damage style is rather weak to armor. But the other thing I want us to key in on is this big ultimate engage. After a few minutes of a rough attack, they do have some ults available, key support ults even, to give them infinite life, and we can see from a bird's eye view, Kaiser on the Orisa running for his life, yielding all that space, baiting them in for the Pharah barrage to land. Keep in mind, there's not really a lot of healing between Brigitte and Ana, so if they're able to get in on Brawl onto the Orisa, they're finding that frag. He has to have the perfect rotation to keep running away, to keep distance, and more importantly, yield cart advancement while they set up for that key deathmatch scenario. Remember, you only need to contest the cart when it's the most ideal setting to do so. Again, from the bird's eye view, as this attack comes through at 45 seconds left on the clock, Kaiser is contesting, and they have a choice. Do they either blow a lot of cooldowns into him when he has halt available, or run past him? They avoid him, but he uses halt to run away. And we can see either in this example or my first one on route, it's the tank's job to sneak in touches onto the objective to contest it while using your tanking abilities to keep your survival rate up, but then disengaging and then yielding some objective while you wait for those cooldowns to come back. It's that dance of extending that uptime on your tank that will buy time for your damage characters to hit shots. And of course, the cool thing about this patch is that now that you play around barriers to protect yourself from a Brig stun, and also her stun just does less damage overall, tanking in general this way is a lot easier in my opinion, and keep in mind, this contenders footage is from the old patch. And I think these tactics are even easier for the reasons I've already stated on the live version. So I hope that helped you guys out. Unless you're going up against a pro team, Goat's comp should feel a lot easier to counter without having to mirror it. But if you're still struggling with it, let me know what's giving you trouble in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave it a like. It really does help us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content. If you haven't already, please subscribe, and you're going to want to hit the bell icon so that you get notified when our videos go live. Link to the description is our Twitter. We'd love to interact with you on there. Pop us a follow and come say hi. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.